Elizabeth Ann Warren, née Herring, born June 22, 1949, is an American politician and former law professor who is the senior United States Senator from Massachusetts, serving since 2013. A member of the Democratic Party and regarded as a progressive, Warren has focused on consumer protection, equitable economic opportunity, and the social safety net while in the Senate. Warren was a candidate in the 2020 Democratic Party presidential primaries, ultimately finishing third. Born and raised in Oklahoma, Warren is a graduate of the University of Houston and Rutgers Law School and has taught law at several universities, including the University of Houston, the University of Texas at Austin, the University of Pennsylvania, and Harvard University. Warren has written 12 books and more than 100 articles. Warren's first foray into public policy began in 1995, when she worked to oppose what eventually became a 2005 act restricting bankruptcy access for individuals. During the late 2000s, her national profile grew after her forceful public stances in favor of more stringent banking regulations after the financial crisis of 2007-2008. She served as chair of the Congressional Oversight Panel of the Troubled Asset Relief Program, and proposed and established the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, for which she served as the first special advisor under President Barack Obama. In 2012, Warren defeated incumbent Republican Scott Brown and became the first female U.S. Senator from Massachusetts. She won re-election by a wide margin in 2018, defeating Republican nominee Jeff Deal. On February 9, 2019, Warren announced her candidacy in the 2020 United States presidential election. She was briefly considered the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination in late 2019, but support for her campaign dwindled. She withdrew from the race on March 5, 2020, after Super Tuesday. Warren began her career in academia as a lecturer at Rutgers University, Newark School of Law, 1977-1978. She then moved to the University of Houston Law Center, 1978-1983, where she became an associate dean in 1980 and obtained tenure in 1981. She taught at the University of Texas School of Law as visiting associate professor in 1981 and returned as a full professor 2 years later, staying from 1983 to 1987. She was a research associate at the Population Research Center of the University of Texas at Austin from 1983 to 1987 and was also a visiting professor at the University of Michigan in 1985. During this period, Warren also taught Sunday school. Warren's earliest academic work was heavily influenced by the law and economics movement, which aimed to apply neoclassical economic theory to the study of law with an emphasis on economic efficiency. One of her articles, published in 1980 in the Notre Dame Law Review, argued that public utilities were overregulated and that automatic utility rate increases should be instituted. But Warren soon became a proponent of on-the-ground research into how people respond to laws. Her work analyzing court records and interviewing judges, lawyers, and debtors, established her as a rising star in the field of bankruptcy law. According to Warren and economists who follow her work, one of her key insights was that rising bankruptcy rates were caused not by profligate consumer spending but by middle-class families' attempts to buy homes in good school districts. Warren worked in this field alongside colleagues Teresa A. Sullivan and Jay Westbrook, and the trio published their research in the book As We Forgive Our Debtors in 1989. Warren later recalled that she had begun her research believing that most people filing for bankruptcy were either working the system or had been irresponsible in incurring debts, but that she concluded that such abuse was in fact rare and that the legal framework for bankruptcy was poorly designed, describing the way the research challenged her fundamental beliefs as worse than disillusionment, and like being shocked at a deep-down level. In 2004, she published an article in the Washington University Law Review in which she argued that correlating middle-class struggles with overconsumption was a fallacy. Warren joined the University of Pennsylvania Law School as a full professor in 1987 and obtained an endowed chair in 1990, becoming the William A. Schneider Professor of Commercial Law. In 1992, she taught for a year at Harvard Law School as the Robert Brocher Visiting Professor of Commercial Law. In 1995, Warren left Penn to become Leo Gottlieb Professor of Law at Harvard Law School. In 1996, she became the highest-paid professor at Harvard University who was not an administrator, with a $181,300 salary and total compensation of $291,876, including moving expenses and an allowance in lieu of benefits contributions. As of 2011, she was Harvard's only tenured law professor who had attended law school at an American public university. Warren was a highly influential law professor. She published in many fields, but her expertise was in bankruptcy and commercial law. From 2005 to 2009, Warren was among the 3 most cited scholars in those fields. Warren began to rise in prominence in 2004 with an appearance on The Dr. Phil Show, and published several books including The Two-Income Trap. In 1995, the National Bankruptcy Review Commission's chair, former Congressman Mike Sinar, asked Warren to advise the commission. Sinar had been a debate opponent of Warren's during their school years. She helped draft the commission's report and worked for several years to oppose legislation intended to severely restrict consumers' right to file for bankruptcy. Warren and others opposing the legislation were not successful. In 2005, Congress passed the Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act of 2005, which curtailed consumers' ability to file for bankruptcy. From 2006 to 2010, Warren was a member of the FDIC Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation Advisory Committee on Economic Inclusion. 45. She is a member of the National Bankruptcy Conference, an independent organization that advises the U.S. Congress on bankruptcy law. 46. A former vice president of the American Law Institute and a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Warren's scholarship and public advocacy were the impetus for establishing the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in 2011. On November 14, 2008, U.S. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid appointed Warren to chair the 5-member Congressional Oversight Panel created to oversee the implementation of the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act. The panel released monthly oversight reports evaluating the government bailout and related programs. 51. During Warren's tenure, these reports covered foreclosure mitigation, consumer and small business lending, commercial real estate, AIG, bank stress tests, the impact of the Troubled Asset Relief Program (TARP) on the financial markets, government guarantees, the automotive industry and other topics. Warren was an early advocate for creating a new Consumer Financial Protection Bureau (CFPB). The Bureau was established by the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, signed into law by President Obama in July 2010. In September 2010, Obama named Warren assistant to the president and special advisor to the Secretary of the Treasury on the CFPB to set up the new agency. While liberal groups and consumer advocacy groups urged Obama to formally nominate Warren as the agency's director, financial institutions and Republican members of Congress strongly opposed her, believing she would be an overly zealous regulator. Reportedly convinced that Warren could not win Senate confirmation as the Bureau's first director. 58. In January 2012, Obama appointed former Ohio Attorney General Richard Cordray to the post in a recess appointment over Republican senators' objections. A close high school friend told Politico in 2019 that in high school Warren was a die-hard conservative, and that she had since done a 180-degree turn and an about-face. One of her colleagues at the University of Texas in Austin said that at university in the early 1980s Warren was, sometimes surprisingly anti-consumer in her attitude. 34. Gary L. Francione, who had been a colleague of hers at the University of Pennsylvania, recalled in 2019 that when he heard her speak at the time she was becoming politically prominent, he almost fell off his chair. She's definitely changed. Warren was registered as a Republican from 1991 to 1996, won and voted Republican for many years. I was a Republican because I thought that those were the people who best supported markets, she has said. 16, but she has also said that in the 6 presidential elections before 1996 she voted for the Republican nominee only once, in 1976, for Gerald Ford. Warren has said that she began to vote Democratic in 1995 because she no longer believed that the Republicans were the party who best supported markets, but she has said she has voted for both parties because she believed neither should dominate. According to Warren, she left the Republican Party because it is no longer principled in its conservative approach to economics and to markets, and is instead tilting the playing field in favor of large financial institutions and against middle-class American families. At a town hall meeting in Holyoke, Massachusetts, on September 29, 2018, Warren said she would take a hard look at running for president in the 2020 election after the 2018 United States elections concluded. On December 31, 2018, Warren announced that she was forming an exploratory committee to run for president. On February 9, 2019, Warren officially announced her candidacy at a rally in Lawrence, Massachusetts, at the site of the 1912 Bread and Roses strike. A longtime critic of President Trump, Warren called him a symptom of a larger problem that has resulted in a rigged system that props up the rich and powerful and kicks dirt on everyone else. Warren staged her first campaign event in Lawrence to demonstrate the constituency groups she hopes to appeal to, including working-class families, union members, women, and new immigrants. She called for major changes in government. Following her candidacy announcement, Warren became known for the number and depth of her policy proposals, including plans to assist family farms by addressing the advantages held by large agricultural conglomerates, plans to reduce student loan debt and offer free tuition at public colleges, a plan to make large corporations pay more in taxes and better regulate large technology companies, several proposals inspired by opposition to President Trump, a plan to utilize economic patriotism, and plans to address opioid addiction. 130-131, one of her signature plans was a wealth tax, dubbed the ultra-millionaire tax, on fortunes over $50 million. Warren was credited with popularizing the idea of a wealth tax with Americans, leading competitor Bernie Sanders to release a wealth tax plan. After several defeats at the polls, including the Democratic primary in her home state of Massachusetts, Warren ended her campaign on March 5, 2020. In early June 2019, Warren placed second in some polls, with Joe Biden in first place and Bernie Sanders in third. 131. In the following weeks her poll numbers steadily increased, and a September Iowa poll placed her in the lead with 22% to Biden's 20%. The Iowa poll also rated the number of voters at least considering voting for each candidate. Warren scored 71% to Biden's 60%. Poll respondents also gave her a higher enthusiasm rating, with 32% of her backers extremely enthusiastic to Biden's 22%. An October 24 Quinnipiac poll placed Warren in the lead at 28%, with Biden at 21% and Sanders at 15%. When asked which candidate had the best policy ideas, 30% of respondents named Warren, with Sanders at 20% and Biden 15%. Sanders was most often named as the candidate who cares most about people like you, with Warren in second place and Biden third. Sanders also placed first at 28% when respondents were asked which candidate was the most honest, followed by Warren and Biden at 15% each.